staying the distance.
The Group 2 Chairman's Quality, the key lead-up race for the Sydney Cup. The favourite was Juja Kibo from Travolta and Campaldino.
Ready to run, stand by for a break. The rain's eased up for the running of the race and the gates are back. Tempesty's pretty tardy out and Newlook settles back in the field. Athabascan jump well together with Campaldino. Changing of the Guard is probing through along the rails and Juja Kibo going forward for an early look. The Irish mare, Seo Linn, pretty handy from Taramansour, the rails and Newlook between the pair. Further back to Age of Sail in a wide position. Tempesty, the fence, Palmetto, and Travolta was snagged back to last. Changing of the Guard, Jason Collett's going to lead, and it's a much easier lead today for Changing of the Guard from the Good Gate. Out by 2 and Athabascan, Juja Kibo the outside working over. Taramansour's taken up 4th position, Campaldino it's outside. Then Newlook from Seo Linn. Age of Sail caught 3 wide from Tempesty, then Palmetto. 2 lengths last of all is Travolta. Changing of the Guard extends the lead at the 1800 metres, the best part of 3 in front now. Juja Kibo gets to second narrowly on the outside of Athabascan. Campaldino with cover in 4th. Age of Sail can't get a spot, so it pushes on out 3 wide. Taramansour midfield the fence now, followed by Seo Linn. So the Irish mare travelling pretty strongly. Then Newlook 2 further back to Palmetto, Tempesty. And one of the favourites, Travolta, is back last of all. The other favourites up running second. 1400 to go. Changing of the Guard rolling by a length and a half. Juja Kibo and Age of Sail just continues to creep a bit closer the outside. Athabascan 4th on the rails, 3/4 to Campaldino. Then came Taramansour from Seo Linn the other. Newlook back on the inside of Palmetto. And the last 2, still Tempesty and Travolta. No change to the order, but they're taking slightly closer order at this point. Changing of the Guard now neck in front. Age of Sail did plenty of work and finally got the spot outside the leader. Followed then by Juja Kibo, who's got a back to follow now on the outside of Athabascan. Then Campaldino, just shading Taramansour. Seo Linn, Newlook, Palmetto, Tempesty. Travolta last of all. Still no change to the action. And they've got 700 metres to go now. And Changing of the Guard, just being nudged along a bit by Collett, building up the res from Age of Sail. 2 further back on the inside, Athabascan from Juja Kibo. Campaldino pulling out. Taramansour's coming off the fence, looking for running as they turn. Into the straight now. Changing of the Guard just in front from Age of Sail. Athabascan up the rails. Campaldino, Juja Kibo letting down together. And further back to Newlook. 2 further back to Travolta. Campaldino moved up, took the lead from Newlook, breathing down its neck. Newlook serves it up to Campaldino. They beat off Juja Kibo. Newlook and Campaldino. Newlook the outside, getting the upper hand now, and Newlook pulling away from Campaldino. Juja Kibo 3rd. Taramansour got going late, very late. Then Athabascan, Travolta making some headway. Further back to Age of Sail.
Newlook, wow, the former French galloper for Trent Busserton and Natalie Young. They obviously rated this guy from the outset. He had his last run in France back in October 2024 when he won on a heavy track over 2,500 metres. That was at listed level. The training team had him nominated for last year's Melbourne Cup, only for him to run a distant 10th in the Archer Stakes in mid-September. This prep, he's had 3 barrier trials and 3 runs to this point. He's been trimmed in sharply for the Sydney Cup as of this result. Of the others, Campaldino and Juja Kibo ran pretty much to expectation, while Travolta was running on well also. Now let's take a look at some Sydney Cup and then some Melbourne Cup odds. Let's start with next week's Sydney Cup. At Bet365, it's Mr. Monaco, the fave, at $5. River of Stars, respected at $7.50, as is Machine Gun Gracie, the WA galloper. She's $11. Newlook has been trimmed into $11, but it's a little bit weird because while recording this, I noticed Bet365 re-updated and put him out to $34, but then a second time I looked, he was back into $11, so maybe a bit of human error going on at Bet365. They've also got Alcance at $26. I'm sure I've heard that she's not going to be taking on the Sydney Cup. She's only had the 2 runs this prep. Be very careful investing your money on futures. Sometimes horses that aren't even going to compete are listed. Now over to Ladbrokes. They have Mr. Monaco as favourite. The second pick for them, Campaldino. And they've got Newlook at $8. So that's very interesting. Vauban is $15. Big doubts that he'll run. Ladbrokes also has Allow Cants at $26. $26 for Travolta. That's pretty generous. He hasn't done much wrong this prep. Maybe with a better barrier, he'll race closer to the pace in the Sydney Cup next week. Okay, now onto the Melbourne Cup. And remember, there is usually an adjustment to many Melbourne Cup prospects after the Sydney Cup. Bet365 has Aliana and Half Yours as equal favourites. Campaldino, the world's best horse, even gets a mention. He's at $19. They'd have to give him 60 kilograms and Half Yours 58 kilograms. Then what, Aliana on 57 kilograms? It just won't happen. Campaldino probably wouldn't pass the VRC's woke veterinary protocols anyway. Admire Terror, the Japanese horse, at $26. He's likely to win the Tenno Show Spring in a couple of weeks and then not travel to Oz due to expectation of a huge weight to carry. Down the list at 50 to 1, there's some that interest me. American Wolf, the Adelaide Cup winner, and also Knight's Choice. Further down at 100 to 1, there is Machine Gun Gracie. She may be running in the Sydney Cup next week. If she does well, they won't be offering $100 in the Melbourne Cup for too long. Now, over at Ladbrokes, it's Half Yours outright favourite and Aliana at $13. Buckaroo, $21. Really? Constitution Hill is $26. Really? He's the 9-year-old ex-jumper that has huge following in Britain and won 2 flat races recently. At $26, it's Observer. And note, this video was recorded before today's ATC Derby. Further down the list, we see his Conqueror Green Spaces at 50 to 1. That will have changed. I just thought I would alert you to the fact also on Ladbrokes, they don't have Knight's Choice at 50 to 1 like Bet365. They have him at 200 to 1. They're also more generous with American Wolf, quoting him at 100 to 1. Anyway, see you again later this week with the world's most best Sydney Cup preview.
Will commence again if you try to take our firearms.